Good morning. Yes, I know my eyes look pretty intense right now. They look worse than I feel, honestly. My alarm went off at 5:30 because I forgot to turn it off the other day, yesterday. And so it woke me up out of a solid sleep, and I was only able as it messed me up. And so I'm up. And so, yeah. Anyway, that's why my eyes look like this. That's why my eyes look like I'm still sleeping, but I'm talking. I'm not talking in my sleep, I promise. I wanted to talk to you real quick about something I was just thinking about, and how in my brain, the brain that I have, the type of brain that I have, a lot of times when I'm reading the Bible, I take a lot of things quite literally. And I have to really think about it, and sometimes it takes me a while to realize, like, oh, I don't think it meant like literally that. I think it was like symbolic or an analogy, or so one of the things that I first noticed when this happened, like when I first started reading my Bible, like really reading my Bible a few years ago, I would read in so many parts of the Bible about our enemies, especially in Psalms. Excuse me, hold on. I had to wet my whistle. That's what my grandpa always used to say. Um, Especially in the Psalms when David would talk about his enemies. Like, I totally understood that David had enemies because he was running from Saul, and David went through a lot. He went through a lot of like deep anguish. David went through depression. Um, but he did have actual true enemies, flesh and blood, like people after him. But then there's other areas in the Bible too that talk about, like, Lord, my enemies, or keep my enemies from setting traps for me and stuff like that. And I kept thinking, like, I can't really relate to that because I think to myself, like, in my life, like, I don't have a whole bunch of enemies. Like, I'm sure there's a few people that don't like me, because nobody likes everybody. You can't, like, it doesn't, not everybody likes everybody, which is sad, actually, because we're all unique and we should all love each other just for that. But anyway, so yeah, I was sitting here thinking, like, well, that doesn't pertain to me because I can't sit here and name all these enemies that I have. But then after a while, it dawned on me, because I didn't have on my spiritual eyes. We have, as believers, a million enemies. I mean, Satan and his army are our enemies, and we are his enemies. He doesn't want us following the Lord. He gets angry. And you'll notice too that when you give your life to the Lord, you'll notice that it's not easy. You feel like you're under attack a lot of the time. Listen, I feel like I've been under attack since I came out of the womb. Ever since I was a kid, things started getting really hard. Even when I was about 5, I remember laying on the couch one night. I remember this clear as day. I was laying there and it just came on all of a sudden. I was totally fine, and then all of a sudden I was not fine. Looking back, it was a panic attack or an anxiety attack, but at the time I thought I was dying. And I started crying, I was shaking, and my parents were like, "What the heck? What's wrong with her?" And yeah, my parents did not super coddle me or anything. They weren't mean, they weren't abusive or anything like that, but they just were like, I mean, my mom was Finnish and my dad was German, so, and English and other stuff too. Like, all of my ancestors, like, were very stoic and very not coddlers at all. Let's just put it that way. So my parents were just like, geez, what's wrong with her, And I was crying, and I said the only way I could describe it was, I'm having dying feelings. And looking back, like I said, it was anxiety. It was a panic attack, but it came out of nowhere. And I was so young, I didn't even have a chance to experience the world yet to bring on an anxiety attack. So I feel like the enemy was attacking me ever since I was a kid. It's almost like he knew I was going to turn to the Lord, you know? I don't know. And like, just, I've been through so much stuff, and like numerous little traumas and some big traumas, and just hardship and challenge after challenge. And I know we all have a story. I'm not saying I'm like an exception or anything like that, but it just seems to me like I've always been under some type of like attack. I mean, I read the book of Job, and I think about what Job went through. Job had it all, and he was such a man of integrity. And Satan went to the Lord in the high court. This is in the beginning of Job. And the Lord's like, what do you want, Satan? And Satan's like, I've been prowling around the earth, and I've been basically like looking for people to devour and stuff. And the Lord is like, well, have you looked at Job? He's a man of faith. And the enemy was basically like, well, can I pick on him? These aren't exact scripture words, but this is like the gist of the story. And the Lord's like, sure, go ahead, but just don't kill him. And so Satan went on the assignment, but Satan went on his merry way and started just wreaking havoc on Job's life. I mean, I have it in my Bible, and my Bible's over there. Hang on a second. In the book of Job, this is horrible. The first thing that happened was all of his animals were stolen and his farmhands were killed. Okay, so Satan really got to work. And then a fire burned the sheep and all the shepherds. And then his camels were stolen and all of his servants were killed. And then Job's children were killed in a windstorm that collapsed the house that they were in. So this all happened, and like it all happened at once. And Job was just like, can you imagine all of that happening all at once? And then after all that, Satan didn't stop there. On one day, the members of the heavenly court came again to present themselves to the Lord, and the accuser Satan said, Satan came with them. Where have you come from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. And then the Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. And he has maintained his integrity, even though you urged me to harm him without cause. Satan replied to the Lord, skin for skin. A man will give up everything he has to save his life, but reach out and take away his health, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, do with him as you please, the Lord said to Satan, but spare his life. So Satan left the Lord's presence and struck Job with terrible boils from head to foot. It was so bad that Job was scraping his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among all the ashes, probably from all the ruins of his home. His wife said to him, are you still trying to maintain your integrity? Why don't you just curse God and die? She was encouraging Job to take his own life. But Job replied, you talk like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad? So in all of this, Job said nothing wrong. And then the entire book goes on where Job's friends come to console him. And they spent like the first 7 days in silence. They just sat there and probably stared at Job like, what do we say? What do we do? This man just like literally went through hell on earth. What do we say to him? And then they started speaking to him, and they were giving him all this wrong information. Like they were saying, I think one of the friends said to him, I have it written down. He said, your children must have sinned against God, so their punishment was well deserved. They're trying to give Job reasoning for all of this stuff that's happened to him. And the whole book just goes on about Job's friends talking to him and Job responding to his friends. And then the Lord steps in and the Lord starts talking to Job. And boy, did he ever talk to Job. He answered Job from the whirlwind. He said, "Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? Brace yourself like a man, because I have some questions for you and you must answer them. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. Who determined its dimensions and stretched out the surveying line? What supports its foundations? And who laid its cornerstone? As the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy." And he went on and just asked Job, like, where were you when I did all this? Where were you when I did all that? And the Lord just went on. And finally, Job was like, "I know that you can do anything and no one can stop you." This is what Job said to God. "And you asked me, who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorance? It is I. It's me. It was I that was talking about things I knew nothing about, things far too wonderful for me. You have said, 'Listen, and I will speak. I have some questions for you, and you must answer them.' I had only heard about you before, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. I take back everything I said, and I sit in dust and ashes to show my repentance." So after all that stuff that happened to Job, he still maintained his integrity. He still kept his faith in God. And then, in the end, when Job prayed for his friends, because the Lord was upset with his friends for giving him wrong information, he's like, "I'm angry with you and your two friends, for you have not spoken accurately about me, as my servant Job has." And so, when Job prayed for his friends, then the Lord restored his fortunes. In fact, the Lord gave him twice as much as before. The Lord blessed Job in the second half of his life even more than in the beginning. And in the beginning, he had it made. For now, he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 teams of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He also gave Job 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. And Job lived 140 years after that, living to see 4 generations of his children and grandchildren. And then he died, an old man who had lived a long, full life. So you see, when we go through attacks from the enemy, and it just seems like we can't catch a break in life, every time we turn around, something is going wrong. Something happens. It could be a trauma, a hardship, anything that brings us down to our knees. And it just seems to be happening over and over again. Think of Job. Read the book of Job, and it will encourage you to just keep going. It will encourage you that we serve a God that is so mighty and so awesome and amazing that who are we to question what happens to our lives when God is ultimately in control and He is sovereign? So I was just sitting here thinking to myself as I was drinking my coffee, I remember the days where I was thinking, I don't have any enemies. Yeah, if we could only see in the other realm, we have a lot of enemies as believers. Satan and his army, they're out, and they don't want people turning to the Lord. They don't want us following Jesus. They want to kill, steal, and destroy everybody that they possibly can. And that's one of the reasons why the Lord instructs us to stay sober and be of alert all the time, because Satan prowls around, patrolling the earth, looking for anyone to devour. Doesn't matter who you are, rich, poor, young, old, male, female, he doesn't care. He'll get anybody he possibly can get his little claws on. And obviously in the book of Job, that was a test. So you never know. God is testing us, God is testing us all the time to see where our faith lies, to see where our hearts are. These are just thoughts that I have in my head that I just wanted to share out loud. I hope I made sense. I enjoy sharing my thoughts on this channel, because if I didn't have this channel, I would just be talking to my dog or talking to God. I always talk to God. But I figured start this channel and maybe you can build a community and have people that you can talk to and relate to, and they can relate to me maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of still half asleep, but I just wanted to share that with you, that there was a day where I was like, enemies? I don't have any enemies. And our enemies are not flesh and blood enemies anyway. It says that too in the Bible. Like, we shouldn't get mad at people. It's the spirit within them. It's not the person. It's the spirit within them that is doing the harm. And that's why we make it our life's mission as believers to try to turn people to God, so that they can start bearing the fruits of the Spirit and start, bearing good fruits like goodness and kindness and gentleness and patience and joy and self-control. And I think I named the majority of the good fruits. I haven't gotten the Bible memorized, but I know some stuff off the top of my head. But okay, I'll let you go. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a good day. I'm sure I'll be back with another message when I have one. Weekends my husband isn't working, so it's hard for me to get away and have private time to myself. Right now I don't know where he's at. I think he's at the gym, so I had a little bit of alone time. So if I don't see you this weekend on here, then I'll definitely be back on Monday, but I'm sure I'll be back at some point this weekend. And now I'm just babbling. This is the way my brain works. It just doesn't stop. I don't have an off button. And sometimes I don't know how to end my video, so I just keep talking, just like I'm doing right now. So I am going to go now for real. Have a good day. Love you.